Breaking news. Welcome to today's headlines. The UN is no longer fit for purpose, but should it be abolished or reformed? The UN is no longer fit for purpose, but should it be abolished or reformed? To my dear listeners, from wherever you're listening from, please stay tuned as I read today's news. The global body was created by the winners of humanity's most destructive war, but that was 80 years ago. Because of its intellectual common sense and Western cultural diversity, the United Nations has been able to preserve its centrality within international politics after the Second World War. Natural reasons explain why the West is losing their position. Their ability to influence world affairs is affected by these. This was not due to their formal status, but rather on the unique abilities of power. Institutions from a past era cannot be ignored, as these benefits have been reduced. In other words, the UN's future is in jeopardy. The only issue is who decides to raise the subject and for what purpose. The West, in order to preserve its position in the emerging world, or the other great powers, in order to create institutions more in line with the reality of international politics. A third option is also possible: a new circle in which there is little scope for a monopoly position of a narrow groups of countries. Will have no need for the traditional institutions of international governance at all. We should not be confused by the fact that powers now as hostile or Russia or China to the Western community are members of the ruling circle by the UN system as permanent members of the Security Council, UNSC. The UN's ability to really run the world has always remained largely on illusion. These two countries retained this status because of their rational desire to prevent a repetition of the previous situation, where powers deemed to be dangerous for global stability were expelled from official institutions. The lesson of the destruction that emerged from Versailles after World War I by an aggrieved Germany and Japan was well learned in both theory and practice. Even more, because China and the USSR were present at the Security Council table, even though the Communist Party was able to assert its authority. This did not have their competitive advantage. They were not tactically more powerful than the US because they had a formal status. Not to mention the fact that official Beijing was admitted into the Security Council, but their relations with Moscow at the time were hostile with both the USSR and China. There is no doubt that on occasion, the permanent members of the UNSC have been able to act as an all-powerful world government, defining for the weaker members of the international community and boundaries of what is allowed. This institution, however, has not dealt with the question of war or peace among its members. This mission has always remained the privilege of bilateral relations determined by the real rather than formal balance of power. This is still the case today. The only institution in Russia-US relations is their capacity for mutual assured destruction. Only the true balance of power around the globe can be represented by the Security Council, and it is not limited to the Moscow-Washington conflict. However, it is precisely this possibility that it is now lacking as a result of its composition, which pursues not global governance, but global containment of both Russia and China by maintaining the hegemonic position of the West. It may sound paradoxical that Russia and China are granted the same right at the Security Council as do the other three permanent members. It is true that this is the case. However, beyond the legal status conferring veto power to the quintet, there is also the practical capability of influencing world governance via the control over procedural practices, personnel assignments within the international bureaucracy. For instance, the UN and its allies also had a huge advantage in the establishment of the UN in 1945. They retained the UN to an extent because of the inertia and power of the institution. To my dear listeners, from wherever you're listening from, please stay tuned as I read, and do drop by at the comment section and let's know what your view is all about. Thank you for listening.